Hey everyone, welcome back to the shop. Today we're going to start tearing down the lower wing. Let the fun begin. All right. It is going to be a fun day today. Not really. Maybe for you guys, not for me. All right, for those of you that did not watch episode number 11, on where I realized that that bottom wing was in terrible shape and it was going to have to be pretty much rebuilt just to get everything taken care of. Now, when I'm saying rebuilt, I'm not saying building a whole new one. I'm going to be cutting this wing apart. I'm going to show you which ribs, I mean pretty much all but 6 ribs on the top of the wing will be removed, the rib caps. All the ribs are going to stay the way they are, I'm hoping. There's a lot of sanding, a lot of adjusting I'm going to have to do just to make sure that everything's ready to go when I put the new rib caps on it. The front part, and I'll show you on the video, I'm going to walk you through. The front part of the wing, the leading edge of the wing is going to have to come off. And then it's going to be sectioned into 3 parts. So it's literally going to be a 3-piece that's going to have to be reassembled entirely. So let me go ahead and get the old cannon fired up. Let me walk you through it. Now, as I spoke about, these are the rib caps that are going to stay the way they are. The bottoms are going to have to come off, but this end, because there's nothing wrong with the ends on that end and up on this wingtip as well. So these are fine just the way they are. These will stay. These will get pulled off as well because I have to come underneath and cut these things off. Go ahead, and when it comes time to on the actual spar itself, it's all going to be sanded down to match the angle of the top of the ribs. So when I put the cap back on, it's going to be good to go. All right, and then the other part that's going to come off, this side over here is the side I don't have to take off. So I have no intention of taking this off. Unless it's going to come into play when I cut this section out. This whole side is going to get popped off, so I'll cut this one off. And the way I'm going to do it is using one of these magnificent little tools. No battery yet. I got to go ahead. It's on the charger. And they work great. Every time you have to come on in and go ahead and split any joints with it. They do a very good job. I got this one for the Tailorcraft years ago, and it works great. So I'll come in, this will get removed, see what kind of changes I need to make underneath this part to go ahead and lay this one down flat on top, because you saw in the last video how this is not even touching the top of the spar. So this all has to be lowered down, and these will be all sanded. So when I put the 1/8 inch cap strip in there, the cap, it's going to go ahead and then lay relatively flush. I'd rather have a little bit proud to sand it in. So that's my plan on that one. And then on this side, because here's part of where you can see the mess. You can see it all over the place when you're looking at it. This is why this is at the wrong angle, because this is supposed to be even with this little dihedral piece that's put in, because it's built into it. It's hard to see from here, but this is how it's designed. And you can see why this end, because we're looking at this upside down in reverse. Here, let me do it this way, just to show you. This was the side that when it sits level, you can see how close it sits to the worktop here versus how high it is down here. And this is a 1/2 inch higher up off the work surface than this side. So that's why when you see the gap here, this little gap versus the non-existent gap on this side, that's why it was glued together wrong. So I hope that gave you a pretty good idea what I've got to do. Now it's time for me to get started. for those of you that have watched this channel for quite some time, and I'm going to hear a little bit of blowback from people again, use white glue on RC planes in certain locations. Don't use them in every location, because although you can see here there was pretty much a good glue spot, how well the balsa stuck to it. I mean, I've got spots where the balsa wasn't even glued down to it, and here on the bottom, how well you can see this. You see how tall these little pieces stand up? It's about a 1/16 of an inch. That was the only place that the balsa was attached to the bottom of this end, was right there on those two little pieces. Don't do that. All right, we're pretty well just all chewed up here. I got these cut out. Now it's time to get everything dressed up and ready to start covering. But first I gotta cut this part. Let me back up. I gotta cut this piece out right here. Here's the center section. And the more you tear apart, the more you realize just how bad things are. This I thought was ambroid glue. When you cut it, it's not ambroid. Ambroid, even though it's the same kind of reddish orange, it does, when you start cutting it, it gets warm and then it loosens up, because the stuff is pretty much, it's susceptible to heat. Higher heat, the more it starts to loosen up. This is epoxy, so that was a real pain in the butt to get through. But on this side, I've got everything already all taken off, and here's the front deck. I had these pieces of tape down here just to sand it, to get it down to the level that I want it at, and keep this here, the internal edge, you know, pretty darn straight. So that'll be fine when we put that back together again. Couple tops, I've got to go ahead and repair this top, so I'm going to sand it down first and see what I've got to do with it, because this nose up here was standing too high up. This one here was too high up. This one back here, over here, was too high up, so I've got to go ahead and start sanding this now, and I'm going to take care of the trailing edge of the rear spar. What I'm going to do is get my little Stanley block plane out, and we'll start planing that down to an angle where I'm going to be okay with it. But you can see how much this almost needs to get dropped down. These things sit almost flush up on the top, and that's 1/8 inch. So this whole thing is going to have to get dropped down there. So it's going to have to come down almost 1/8 inch. So I'm going to get this with the block plane first, come in, get it done as well as I can with the block plane, and then I'll come back with just a little sanding blocks and get it down exactly where I want it. So I'll take care of that on this side. Let me go ahead and we're going to remove this section first, just because it's going to make it easier for me to do this with this center section out. So I'm going to go ahead and cross your fingers. I'm not expecting anything that's going to be quick and easy. I think it's going to be a bigger mess and a bigger cleanup, but it's got to be done, because you can see the gap that's here is also a huge gap on this side too. So I've got so I've got to pull all this stuff apart.